You're about to enter the darkest corner of Brazil's military dictatorship, a place where the government didn't just torture bodies, it engineered the destruction of the human mind. Pause. Inhale. This was the SNI's most secret, brutal, and psychologically lethal operation. The one even generals whispered about. Tonight we reveal the true nightmare behind Operation Black Aquarium, the operation designed to make people disappear, not only from the world, but from memory itself. To understand the terror, you must first understand the architecture of the fear itself. It had a name, the Serviço Nacional de Informações, the SNI, created in 1964 by the regime's chief ideologue, General Golbery de Couto e Silva. The SNI was the dictatorship's silent, invisible brain. Golbery, a chillingly brilliant strategist, didn't just want to police Brazil, he wanted to rewire its very soul. He envisioned an omniscient state, a central nervous system of control that could preemptively identify and neutralize threats before they even materialized. This was not merely a secret police force, it was a grand project in social engineering designed to last for generations. It was a machine built on a foundation of clinical paranoia, a machine built to hunt and destroy a phantom menace they called the internal enemy. This enemy had no uniform. It could be anyone. A student reading a forbidden book, a union leader organizing a strike, a journalist asking the wrong questions, a priest advocating for the poor. It was a war not against an army, but against ideas, a war against anyone who could think for themselves. The SNI's mandate was total information awareness. They built a sprawling network of informants that reached into every corner of Brazilian society. Universities, newsrooms, factories, even local community groups. No conversation was truly private. Every word could be recorded, filed, and analyzed. To process this flood of information and weaponize it, their analysts were trained in the dark arts of psychological warfare, using manuals supplied and perfected by their Cold War allies in the United States. Manuals like KUBARK, the CIA's own guide to coercive interrogation. They studied techniques of sensory breakdown, coercive persuasion, and mind-fracturing interrogation, designed not just to extract information, but to shatter a person's identity. The goal was to make the victim doubt their own reality, to break their will to resist, to turn them into a tool for the state. If the notorious DOI Cody was the regime's hammer, the blunt instrument of abduction, torture, and murder, then the SNI was the surgeon in the dark. They were the ones who selected the targets. They were the ones who compiled the dossiers, who analyzed the vulnerabilities, who scripted the interrogations. They provided the intellectual justification for the brutality. DOI Cody broke bodies in basement cells, but the SNI aimed for something deeper. They wanted to break the mind of a nation. From its headquarters in Brasilia, its influence spread like a cancer, establishing a presence in every state, every major city. An invisible empire of spies and analysts, all dedicated to a single terrifying purpose: enforcing silence. The SNI didn't believe Brazil was fighting rebels. They believed Brazil was fighting an invisible war against ideas, symbols, culture, memory. And from this paranoia, Operation Black Aquarium was born. No official record admits it, but cross-reference testimonies, foreign intelligence cables, and surviving fragments reveal a blueprint for psychological annihilation. Around 1969, the SNI created a parallel intelligence structure focused entirely on controlling perception. Historians like Elio Gaspari and Carlos Fico mapped this shift. The dictatorship didn't want to just crush dissent, they wanted to program fear into society. Operation Black Aquarium targeted journalists, students, professors, artists, anyone shaping public imagination. This wasn't about killing revolutionaries, it was about strangling the future. The architecture of Black Aquarium was a chilling testament to systematic human destruction, a meticulously engineered process designed not just to eliminate a target, but to unmake them entirely. The operation had three distinct, yet interwoven layers, each a deeper circle of hell, each designed to strip away another piece of a person's existence. It was a factory of annihilation, operating in the shadows of everyday life. Layer 1, total surveillance. This was the foundation. The state's eyes and ears were everywhere, but Black Aquarium refined this into a science. Infiltrators posing as students, janitors, even sympathetic professors, embedded themselves deep within university life and activist circles. They weren't just listening for dissent, they were mapping souls. Every conversation was logged, every friendship analyzed, every private vulnerability cataloged. Wiretaps captured whispers in dorm rooms, while extensive networks of informants turned communities against themselves. The goal was to create a psychological blueprint of entire social networks, identifying not just leaders, but the emotional fault lines that could be exploited to make the whole structure collapse. Layer 2. Psychological operations. Once a target was isolated, the psychological warfare began. This was not about extracting information, it was about shattering the mind. Drawing directly from the CIA's most notorious interrogation manuals, operatives employed a brutal suite of techniques. Sleep distortion would stretch on for days, blurring the line between waking and nightmare. Sensory deprivation in soundproofed, lightless rooms would erode the subject's grip on reality. This was compounded by forced disorientation, moving them between identical, featureless cells so they lost all sense of time and place. The psychological torment was even more insidious. Staged betrayals by trusted comrades, carefully orchestrated to break their spirit. The objective was a controlled emotional breakdown, a cognitive dismantling that left the individual a hollowed-out shell, pliable and utterly broken. Not interrogation, cognitive dismantling. It was the deconstruction of a personality, piece by painful piece, until nothing recognizable remained. Layer 3. Administrative erasure. This was the final chilling act. After the mind and body were broken, the system moved to erase any proof the victim had ever existed. It was a bureaucratic murder. Operatives with chilling clerical precision would access and purge official databases. Birth certificates, university transcripts, voting registries, all deleted. Physical evidence was systematically destroyed. Photographs were burned, names were struck from yearbooks, and family records were altered. The person became a ghost, a void in the official narrative. Friends and family who asked questions were intimidated into silence or became targets themselves. The state wasn't just denying their existence, it was enforcing their non-existence. A person wasn't killed once. They were killed 3 times, physically, socially, and historically. First the body, then the memory, then the proof they ever drew breath at all. A perfect, silent execution, leaving behind nothing but a clean, empty space in the pages of history. Here's where the story becomes hell, not in the sterile corridors of power, or the documented prisons, but in the places that officially never existed, the places that lived only in the whispers of those who survived them, and the nightmares of those who did not. To operate beyond any law, beyond any possibility of oversight or accountability, the SNI built what researchers now call double basements. These were secret torture chambers, deliberately established outside all official government and military facilities. They were designed for one purpose, to be completely deniable, a black hole in the map of the state where individuals could be disappeared without a trace. The locations were chosen for their anonymity. An unremarkable house in a quiet suburb, a rented storage unit in a forgotten industrial park, a soundproofed workshop behind a legitimate business. Inside these mundane shells, a meticulous scientific hell was constructed. Walls were lined with acoustic foam, not just to muffle screams but to create a dead space, an unnerving silence. Floors were fitted with drains, rooms were filled not with crude instruments of pain but with sophisticated equipment, medical restraints, complex wiring for sensory manipulation, and recording devices to study the very process of a mind breaking. Inside them, the goal was not merely to extract information but to systematically dismantle a human being. Survivors describe a calibrated nightmare, confinement boxes barely 1 meter long where the body could neither stand nor lie straight, forcing it into a permanent agonizing crouch for days on end. Simulated executions, repeated so many times that the mind could no longer distinguish rehearsal from reality. The constant gnawing terror became the only truth. They weaponized the senses. Strobe light patterns were engineered for sensory collapse, inducing seizures and hallucinations. 24-hour psychological message loops, a distorted mix of white noise, family members' voices twisted into accusations, and political rhetoric played backwards, were designed to shatter a subject's core beliefs. One survivor paraphrased the experience: "They don't just want you to talk, they want to reach inside your skull, pull out your soul and replace it with their own noise. You forget your name. You forget why you are there. You only know the light and the sound." This was forced isolation designed to erase identity itself. They called the most extreme of these programs the Black Aquarium. It was a state of total sensory deprivation. Victims floated in a void, no time, no light, no sound, no human contact, nothing to anchor the mind. In the Black Aquarium, there was no past to remember and no future to hope for. There was only an endless, floating present. The self, unmoored from reality, would simply dissolve. Between 1971 and 1973, the operation hit its bloodiest phase. Guerrilla groups were already collapsing, but the SNI didn't stop. They turned to destroying memory makers, students, philosophers, poets, journalists, filmmakers. To kill an idea, you don't kill the leader. You kill the storytellers. And the disappearance curve spikes exactly where the archives go silent. In 1974, the dictatorship committed its biggest mistake. It trusted human beings. Agents leaked audio, memos, and field notes to foreign diplomats and intelligence services. US cables began referencing aquarium and psychological collapse procedures. The regime panicked. Files were burned, safe houses shut down, operatives reassigned, but the smell of smoke never leaves the room. Operation Black Aquarium wasn't just brutality, it was theoretical violence. It followed the logic of Foucault's biopolitics, Lewin's perceptual control theory, Pavlovian emotional conditioning, state-induced desensitization, institutional silence. The mission was to create a population afraid to speak, afraid to organize, afraid to remember. The residue is still alive today, a society suspicious of authority, divided, traumatized, and numb to institutional violence. More than 40% of SNI archives were destroyed before the dictatorship ended. What remains? Fragments, cross-referenced cables, oral testimonies, administrative ghosts, names that disappeared from existence, patterns that prove the operation, even if the files don't. A monster doesn't need to be seen to leave footprints. Operation Black Aquarium wasn't just a secret mission, it was a national psychological experiment designed to rewrite fear, and understanding it isn't about revisiting the past, it's about recognizing the machinery of power that still moves underneath modern Brazil. If you want more brutally honest geopolitical truth, like this video, share it, and make sure this story is never buried again.